Let's define a sense of self. Many childhood trauma survivors struggle with things like identity, personality, and sense of self because there's a lot of overlap between those three things. So to differentiate between those three things, let's start with identity. Identity are things that we identify with, ranging from values to politics to music. One can view identity as things that we're aligned with on our insides and our interests and our values. Personality, which we're born with, is something a healthy family system and healthy attachment helps us develop our inner nature that we come out in the world with. Personality traits as infants and toddlers can range from things like spiritedness to being easygoing, to being a rule follower, to being shy, to being cautious. And we're born with a lot that can either be nurtured or can be lost. Check out a video that I did on trauma personality versus our real personality. I'll have that link in the description. So the third thing, sense of self, which is our focus here, is what I would say is a foundational awareness of one's identity and personality, and inherent goodness, and also having some power, which can come from the place of self-love and self-acceptance. I know that that's a mouthful, and being raised to be allowed those two things, goodness and power. If we're loved as kids, we can love ourselves, which becomes an inner reserve, and some power can come from that. Goodness being things like worth, integrity, dignity, you can think of those things as the opposite of shame, which will always be an elevated issue for those of us who grew up in childhood trauma. And I also have a very detailed video about childhood trauma-based shame. Lots of things going on in the description. I'll put a video link there on shame. To show you what I mean, as a side note, when, say, a 3-year-old is told that they are bad or that they're not lovable, or an abusive parent is giving them horrific feedback, a child's goodness is gone from them. And that can feel like, for them, a life and death experience. That's big. It's telling them that they're unlovable, when being lovable is their whole world of safety for their own development, that concept, being good. And that idea about it being a life and death experience for a really small child is something that I feel like is missing from the DSM when they talk about PTSD in terms of life and death experiences. They don't really talk about that in terms of what child view. And lack of goodness in our adulthood through our abuse conditioning is often what we feel when we assume that we don't have the right to defend ourselves because we don't have that goodness. Or we overly defend, like when we take things way too personally, we're defending that lack of goodness. Or we tend to be in a fight response when triggered when we're really defending. We can also name that as shame. And often a toxic family demands enmeshment, where we have some goodness, kind of, in such a family, only if we are